This porch is 10 feet out from the house. It's going to have hip ends. Over here at the far corner, because it's 10 feet out from the house, there's 10 feet between the posts. All the other posts are 8 foot on center. So in order for me to make sure this hip end is a 45 and the roof pitch is the same, from the corner, I have to come over 10 feet because I'm 10 feet out. My first rafter is going to be at 10 feet. I'll add like a little rafter back here at the 8 foot on center mark if I feel like I need to. Depending on where that hip rafter comes down, I might not need to. And then from there, I'm going to have rafters over my post. So I will have like a 6 foot bay, but then all the rest will be 8. So once I get it up there and I can show you, it'll make a little more sense. But I want to make sure that both sides of this are 312. That's what the plans call for. I think it'll look nicer. I mean, it would be just a little, if I went with an 8 foot base spacing, the end would just be a little bit steeper, which I don't think anybody would notice. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But I want to keep it consistent with 312 all the way around, so that's what I'm going to do. I've got my first one marked out. I'm going to use this Simpson strong tie bracket. I'm going to mount it in place. That way when I put my sub rafter up, I know exactly where it's going to go. Now that I have this first one 10 feet off, all I have to do is go along each post and put right in the center of the post, put a bracket. And then what I'll do is I'll pull a tape from this corner, get measurements for all those, and I'll transfer them over on the wall where I'll put a hanger for the sub rafter. So that mark is lined up with that bracket. So we have this side all lined up. I have my marks here to put my brackets up, but I'm going to go ahead and mark out this side and then mark out this side. That when I get my Tico nailer up here, I can put all those up at once. Took the grain. I really trust this old Keller ladder. Probably not. How do we fit?
Good.
All right, guys, so up here at this connection, we have a hanger, 6x6 hanger that's got structural screws into structural material. And instead of putting screws on the side of this bracket, I will drill and put a series of screws angling down into my header. That way I don't have any screws over here that affect my trim. Now I can butt my trim nice and flush up against that, and it looks really good. Sub rafter coming across, that's going to sit right on top of this, and it's going to get nailed into this header. And then my rafter is going to come down this side and get nailed into all this structural material. So uplift on this is not going to be an issue because there's going to be plenty of material over it that's attached to the building. And a line over here. Those owls. Once on a winter. Alright guys, we all got our sub rafters up. I'm going to start putting up our rafters. So our sub rafters are up there with I use a 2x8 or 2x10 hanger. That way it extends up a little bit. And then I cut a 2x4 block that'll go between the sub rafter and the rafter just to give that support. I run some 6-inch structural screws, the same ones I use for purlins, into the header. To hold that in place, I can set my rafter on it, toe screw it in, toe screw that in, and then I'll come back and I'll make braces that will attach the rafter to the sub rafter. So we're just going to continue our way down, try to get these all up before noon. I think we can do it. Alright, so we have all of our normal rafters, sub rafters in. You can see we have a 2x6 sub rafter that our rafter lands on. Now we're going to do our hip corner. And I suppose you could run this 2x6 all the way through, but you really don't need to. So I need a measurement from that corner to this corner. That's my run. I know that 5.5 inches up, my rise is 33 inches. So with those two measurements, I can get my diagonal. The thing you have to remember when you're doing hip or valleys, you got to use those angle marks. You can't use your commons or they'll be off, so you got to use your hip and valley. I'm going to do my 312. This is a 312 roof. So I'm going to go on the hip valley portion, line up my 3, and I'm going to make a mark. Now I'm going to show you if I was to use the common, you can see how much those would be off. So that's why it's important to make sure you're using the right one. So based on the Pythagorean theorem, my top cut length is going to be 183.5. So once I cut this, I can just hook over the end, mark 183.5. And that's where this rafter will meet the fascia. And makes a mess, so 183.5. So that's where this rafter meets my fascia boards. So the thing I have to do is, on my normal rafters, is I have a 2x6, so that's 5.5 inches. I do not have that on this. I'm using this to get my fascia height. So again, I'm going to come to this point. I'm going to set it on my hip valley 312. Make a mark down. I know my fascia board is 5.5 inches. This is 1.5 inches back in, so I need to be roughly 6 1/4 because this is going to continue down. It'll make sense once I put it in there, or put it up. I want to do, gosh, there we go. And then I'm just going to make a 90 with my square. And then that's going to be my return cut. So I need a straight edge to extend that out. So I'll cut that, and then we'll go test fit this. A lot of times, because there's an inside corner, I end up having to cut a little off of this because I'm not cutting a 90. So these fit into the corner of the fascia boards. I just like to put them in there, test fit it, go from there. So we have this tacked up here, just have it toe screwed in here. And once we get the whole porch built, I'll come back, put a board across here, and put a support underneath just to make sure that those screws will never come loose and we get too much weight there. But right now, tacked in, it's fine. All right, guys, so typically what I do is I'll run that first hip rafter, and then I will start working my fascia board around the porch. So as you can see in the video, I got the first rafter in, hip rafter, ran my fascia to the next corner, put that hip rafter in, and then ran the fascia around and just continued around the porch. All right, guys, so once all your fascia is on, you can start putting your purlins on. I choose to use drop purlins on my porch, and I just like it because no matter what the pitch of the porch is, I can just drop these purlins in, run my rafters all the way out to the end of the sub rafter, and I don't have to worry about it. If you want to use purlins on edge, on top of your rafters, you're going to have to set your rafters back from the edge, which requires extra math depending on the pitch of the roof. So it gets a little bit more complicated. You're not saving height one way or the other. Whether you choose purlins on top of your rafters or you choose drop purlins, you're going to have good results. With these rafters, I had marked all of my purlins on the ground, so that makes life a lot easier. I don't want to drive my lift on this concrete, so it's just real easy to have them pre-marked, drop my brackets in, and then drop my purlins in. Now, when you're doing drop purlins, you want to make sure you measure. What I do is I start with a bay, I measure the top, the middle, and the bottom, and make sure I have a nice consistent, it should be within 1/8, 1/4 of an inch all the way up, and then I get one measurement, cut all of them. Then I go to the next bay, and you want to make sure that you're not just, cutting them at 94.5 if you have an 8-foot spacing, because those brackets take up about 1/8 of an inch. So if you cut them 94.5 for an 8-foot spacing, you're going to start growing your bays, and your trusses or your rafters are going to start leaning because you're going to be growing those bays. So make sure you measure each bay after you put a set in. One other thing that you want to do is you want to crown your purlins. Crown up, obviously. Works out really good. Alright, now that I have all of those in, I'm going to come back with my Tico nailer, nail in all the top of the brackets, and then I can screw in or nail in all of the 2x4 purlins into the bracket. You have to have a nail. It can be tricky. It goes through the bracket, through the board, and then through a hole in the center of the bracket. So you can see right here, your nail will go in here, it'll angle through the board, and then it's got to hit this hole, which sometimes that can be difficult. So most likely you're not going to hit it the first time and you're going to get frustrated, but you just got to keep at it. So I have all of the brackets fastened in, all the purlins are dropped in there. Now I need to run my nails or screws. I'm going to use screws here through the bracket, through the board, into my rafter. But what I'm going to do is halfway up, I'm going to take a strap, hook it over here, go all the way to the end, hook it over there, and ratchet it tight. And what that will do is it will suck, make sure that's all sucked together so this last rafter doesn't spread. And then when I'm running there, and there's no chance that there's going to be a gap created. So I'm going to measure from there, 105 and 1/8 at the short corner. .81 3/4. Alright, so now that I got those, I got to make a compound cut. So I need a 45, and then this is a 312, so it should roughly be at 14 degrees. This is a hip, so see what that is. On degree-wise, it's probably going to be less than 14 degrees. So I'll have to make a compound cut, then I can put these two purlins in, and then I can work my way up, and then I'll do this side. Love my new square, by the way. It's pretty sweet. So we're cutting these hip rafters. We're not cutting the hip rafters, we're cutting the purlins that die into the hip rafters. So you're going to have two angles. You're going to have the roof pitch, which is a 312. Use my hip valley 312. Score, mark a line with a pencil. And then I'm going to set my circular saw at 45 degrees. So then I'll just cut along this line with my circular saw, and the blade will be set at 45, so that then when this sits in there, you get a nice fit. Make yourself a little template. Make sure it's going to fit properly. Mark that down further. I'm not going to have enough real estate. See my blade set at a 45. So I'm just going to watch my blade on there. Now I can go take this up there, mark it for length. We're just going to continue working our way up. I always toenail these or toe screw them. If you're nervous about that, you can always take a 2x4 when you have all of them in and run it right underneath them, right here. So they're sitting on something and nailed into this rafter. Not necessary, but you could always do that if you wanted to. All right, you guys can see I had to finish up that last hip corner the next morning, which was day 27 of this build. It took me about 11 hours total to frame up the porch roof. So that's all the sub rafters, rafters, fascia, and all of the dropped purlins. Day 27, 28, I think I jump around a little bit. Make sure you come back, check it out. As always, we appreciate you guys watching. If you want more information about Mr. Post Frame, Back 40 Buildings, check out mrpostframe.com. We have all the information you need to all that, plus all of our partners. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, share us with your friends, and we will catch you on the next video.